Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, all. I am super excited for you to hear this next conversation with my good friend, Squire Servance. You'll hear me say I think Squire's really, really smart. And he's also really, really invested in thinking about healthcare, health equity, and how we can change the landscape in terms of getting access to people through some of the innovation that he is looking at with the new company. And so I really want you to hear this conversation and tell a friend. I like to bring people to you that I think you need to hear how they built their brands and also what innovations and what new things that they're doing. And Squire is a perfect example of that. So enjoy. Hi, everybody. It's Paula, your host of Branding Room Only. Super, super excited today to be talking to my good friend, Squire Servance. He is the founder and managing partner of Syridex Bio, an investment firm focused on advancing life sciences for global health equity. As a health equity advocate, Squire is focused on investing in medicines and therapies for underserved populations. Previously, he held leadership roles at Repligen Corporation and Baxter International, overseeing legal and corporate functions. He also actively serves on boards, including as a trustee for Rutgers University. Squire, welcome to the Branding Room.
Oh, Paula, thank you for having me.
So excited to be talking to you. Really, well, we'll get into this, but because I think of you as somebody really smart.
That's good. It's good branding, right? There you go, right?
Exactly. I was going to say it's a good brand thing. Speaking of, what does the concept of personal brand mean to you?
So I think personal brand really is about how you want people to see you. I think it needs to be rooted in authenticity. It should really mirror what your true self is, but you also have to be intentional about it. But I think if you want a personal brand to be sustainable, it has to be authentic. And that's the only way you'll have a lasting brand, because at some point you can't be fake, for your entire life. Sometimes it's going to crack. So it's just got to mirror what your true self is.
Ain't that the truth? It will crack. So thinking of personal brand, how would you describe yourself in 3 short words or phrases?
Ooh, good question. I would say, I would think people probably think me very ambitious. I would say mission oriented, and then a connector, right? Trying to be the conduit to connect people within the network.
See, you even used the word conduit. I told y'all he was smart. I was like, science something or the other. Okay. So what is your favorite quote, or do you have a mantra that you use in your daily, and there to keep yourself up and focus on whatever you're doing?
It's funny. Like I collect quotes. Like I keep all the things in the phone. I track them, but a couple of the ones like I'll kind of share here is like, what's for me is for me, right? That's one. I can't look at what someone else is doing. Their career is their career. What's me is meant for me, and no one else can take it. And so that that leads me to like stay focused, stay in the lane, and just keep my blinders on as I go forward. And then another one I usually kind of lean into is like aim for perfection, but achieve excellence, right? That is, the name of the game. I want to be perfect. I know I can't be. But hopefully I work hard enough, put in the hours and the work. I can hopefully settle on excellence.
Excellence is the standard. Yes, because perfection can't be reached, but I do like it. I think of it as like the stars. When we get to the moon, that's excellence.
Right. Look, same thing. Aim for the stars, land on the moon, right? It's the same concept.
I love that. So tell me this. So I love to ask people about their hype song. And the way that I think about it is this. Like, if they're going to get full Squire, what song is playing in your head when you're walking into a room? Or if you're having a bad day, what song are you using to get yourself up? And it could be the same song or a different one.
For me, and so I'll give you some context. I'm from South Jersey, a town called Sicklerville. I get the Philly radio stations, Philadelphia radio stations. So for me, Meek Mill's Dreams and Nightmares, that's going to get me hyped, right? And I think you're growing up when you hear him on the radio before he had the album, because he was big there for a while, and then he drops the album with Dreams and Nightmares, and I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this, and like Exactly. Right. It's like the it's the comeuppance. He's like, it was the grittiness, it's the grind. He put in the work to get to where he was at. And he was like, so I had to grind like that to rhyme like, or to shine like this. So like it's that the up and comer, that gritty, that grind of actually achieving his goal. And so he worked for years before he made it big internationally, I would say. And so that's something that'll get me hyped.
Yeah. I like that song because I like the build up, right? It's like even the way he's rapping it is like the build up. And as an entrepreneur, I feel I'm like, yes.
Exactly. When the beat switches, right? Like you're like, okay, hold up, wait a minute. Yeah, absolutely. That's where like I'm a musician too, so I love the musicality of it and how.
Are you a musician? Well, what? You're a musician? What?
Yeah, I am. I play the piano. So I grew up, I grew up like playing like classical music and things like that, and then I found I saw somebody playing something that I liked, and I was like, I want to do that, and so I started playing by ear and I used to have a band in college called Raw Talent. We used to go around. We owned we did a lot of events around the Rutgers community in Brunswick. So I love playing music. I love listening to music, all types too.
So this is why I love doing this podcast, because people who I'm like, yeah, I know them. I'm like, oh wait, there's always more. There's always more to know. Which leads me to my next question. Tell me about where you grew up and how that shaped your brand.
Yeah, so town called Sicklerville, South Jersey, outside of Philly. I think community is just really people, right? And so there are a lot of people that I grew up with that have influenced me over the career. Absolutely, my parents, my brother. Talking about my brother, we're 18 months apart, so being competitive with him at all times, was something my mother really taught me. Kind of the hard work and the grind. So my mother was a judge. She was also a former Marine. You talk about hard work, dedication. She leaned into it. Okay. And there was zero sympathy for me for anything. Like if I ever wanted something and I'm like, this is hard, my mom will look at me and say, well, you wanted this, right? This is what you asked for? Okay. There was like zero sympathy. And so she taught me about the hard work, the grind. My dad was really ambitious. And so I kind of got that from him. And then I would say, I look at a number of the teachers that I had. Like I could point to one teacher that really got me interested in sciences, my sixth grade teacher. And so I thought and that was like an impetus from a career move, tracked onto what I'm doing today. And, then I got my family and my other friends that were in the community that keep me grounded and help shape some of my personality. I like to joke a lot too. So they probably help shape that.
I love that. So, I knew you had a Jersey connection, but I didn't really sort of think about the specifics. So my parents moved to New Jersey when I was 14. And so they moved to South Jersey. So my parents lived in Willingboro.
Oh, Willingboro.
So I was like, I understand that whole thing. I was like, this is more Philadelphia than New Jersey. It really is.
Look,
skipping a jump.
It's you really South Jersey, North Jersey. Some people argue it's the Central Jersey, but it's really South and North from my perspective, because the North gets, like, from a TV and radio, you get all the New York stations, and South you get all the Philly. So that's why you have South Jersey, Philadelphia 76ers, Eagles, all the other stuff. It's just because that's the media market you're in. New Jersey really doesn't have one. So it is split, and you get two different jerseys in that context.
I know when we drive there, I'm like, okay, we got to switch radio stations.
Right. You get below that line. It's like, all right, that Hot 97 is not working anymore. You got to switch to Power 99. Yeah, exactly.
Once you get by Great Adventure, right? That's Six Flags. It's like, okay, you got to switch it up. Okay, so tell me about your education journey. You talked about sixth grade being your science emphasis. What happened after that? Tell me about high school, college, and after.
So sixth grade, I did a project on orthopedic surgeons, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I was like, wait, you get to be a doctor, you get to work with athletes. This is pretty cool. And so that's what really started me on my kind of science medical career, if you want to call it that. And I ended up going to Rutgers University, and I wanted a degree that if I didn't go to med school or anything like that, I could practice. So I ended up doing biomedical engineering. I enjoyed the area a lot. I ended up adding another major, cell biology and neuroscience. So those are my majors, right? While there, and did some interesting research around on Parkinson's patients and how to detect where you need a lesion in the brain to stop the tremors, things like that. And so the plan was ultimately to go to medical school. Decided at my the last minute you can in undergrad that wasn't the route for me. It was me talking to a bunch of doctors, figuring out personally what I liked, and ultimately that wasn't the move. And ultimately pivoted to law. And I ended up going to Duke Law School. And while there, I applied to the business school. So I do have a joint J. I did the joint JD and MBA program while there. And I felt like it was I knew I was going to practice law, but I felt like getting the extra year and getting the MBA would be helpful in the legal side of my career, because a lot of times, the law is a means to an end. So there's a business decision, and the lawyers help implement it, the contracts and what have you. And I wanted to understand a little bit more of kind of the business decisions, what goes into it, and how to think like a true business person. And so that's why I ended up getting that. And then after that, I went and I clerked for a year in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals out in Oklahoma City. And before I started my practice. So that is like my educational journey. And I look back and I kind of try to characterize. I try to, whenever situation, to get the most out of it, which is probably why I look back. I'm like, I got the double major. Right? I was like, well, I'm here. I'm like, I got a scholarship for 4 years. I'm going to maximize it, right? And so get the most out of it. Same thing was that when I was at Duke, right? It's like I'm here. Literally, the business school is next door. Why not go out and learn a little bit more about business? And so that's kind of a telltale sign for me personally about who I am. And I think it tracks probably throughout my career about trying to do a little bit more to get the most out of whatever the opportunities presented.
I told y'all he was smart. See, because I was like, what I did when I got to school, so I was like, when do I finish? This is nice, but I want it to be done. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I can barely say the things that you got. You're a double major. But no. It's a different, I can honestly, because I'm grateful and blessed enough to have a lot of smart friends. But the folks who have that science background, it's different. The conversations that you have, you can sort of see, that meme with the calculations.
Yeah, right. Spinning in your head.
You can kind of see that happening, and I mean, just brand wise, it for me is like, yeah, I'll just stand next to Squire, and that's good enough.
You know what? I look back. I don't think I did anything different than most. I truthfully. It was hours in. The more I studied, the better I did. Like literally, it wasn't rocket science for me. It was like I just got to study more, right?
But it was almost rocket science. It was kind of rocket science.
Almost rocket science. Like I remember. So for example, my first exams at Rutgers, in like all of I think I failed the majority of them. Now I ended up graduating with honors, which
of course you did.
But think about it. Like that first time, I'm like, it was different. So I actually had to change how I studied and change how I approached learning.
Yeah. And
it just required more hours. So to me, it was just like, all right, you gotta put in more time. Right?
Yeah. So you clerked and then you started practicing. Tell me a little bit about more your career journey, and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I ended up going to a firm, Morgan Lewis in Philadelphia, joined their patent group, intellectual property group, and did a lot of great work. I did a lot of work with life sciences companies, did a lot of med device, some pharma, and then did some representing some banks as well, some business method patents. And then I got really good at writing patents and understanding the strategy behind it. And I ultimately kind of got interested in doing more transaction work. So I started doing like the IP provisions of contracts and what have you. And, and once I started doing deals, then I started to see where people were having impact. I found like the people that were controlling where innovation was going were the investors. Right? And this is, I'll put this pin in here because it kind of ties to what I'm doing now.
Okay.
And so early on in my career, I was like, man, the people that can say, hey, this gets funded or this innovation gets developed or not, were the ones that were putting the money in. And so early on in my legal career, I was like, look, I ultimately want to get into investing at some point, whether it be my fund or working for someone else. And it's funny, I do these things called personal development plans. Like, it is not just work, but it's life, it's everything, right? And I look back on one, recently, it was 2015, 2014, and it was like, hey, start a fund, right? Literally. And this was while I'm at Morgan Lewis. And so I ended up at the time speaking with a gentleman who ran his own fund. And he was like, look, Squire, if you want to do what I'm doing, you got to leave the law firm, go in house. He recommended me go over, like, do business development, go over to the business and do a variety of things. My career took me a different trajectory, but for the most part, I followed that path. And so I ended up working at Morgan Lewis for a little over 6 years, I think. And then I went in-house, worked at Dr. Reddy's doing business development work, the legal side supporting the business development team, acquiring products. Then I went to Baxter out in Chicagoland area, and I pretty much was head of legal for the pharmaceutical business. It was a $2 billion business. Great experience, great team, great people. Got a chance to kind of manage teams. Majority of my team was in India, spent a lot of time over there. And then I was ultimately hired to become general counsel at a company in Boston, like bioprocessing company. It's a public bioprocessing company. And, that was kind of my career, legal career. And, kind of what happened was, and this may be the next question, but this pivots to kind of what I'm doing now, is, I had this idea for investing, right? I'm like, okay, what does that look like? And then in the middle of COVID, you start to see, it was hard to hide health disparities. More people of color were dying, longer hospital stays, a variety of other metrics that you're looking at. And so I started thinking through, is there a way to, from an investment standpoint, address health disparities and accelerate health equity? And so the idea for my firm kind of stemmed from those 2 points. And one of the, I knew some people in the space that had the idea from investing. And so I was speaking with them to kind of figure out, hey, what's the model? What's the investment strategy? What's the thesis? And we kind of ended up landing on something that I felt comfortable with. And my wife was, she pretty much was like, all right, Squire, you've been talking about this long enough. Go do it. Go just go out and do it. And so I decided to kind of take that leap to go launch my own firm. And it's been great ever since.
Well, so there's a couple things that I love about this. One is that even as you're talking, I could feel I love that your first word was ambitious because we're talking the same talk, right? So as you were talking about what you did, it was like, and then what's next? And I could feel it because I think folks who have that ambitious core don't ever stay comfortable. Like, it's like, this is nice, what's next? Yeah. And when you talked about, I wrote it down, personal development plan, I was like, oh my gosh, are me and Squire best friends? Because, every year I talk to people about at the beginning of the year, what is our goal this year? Putting everybody together, 500 people on the internet. And I say, let's walk through this, because when you have a plan, you have a goal, you have someplace to go to. And you may not hit everything on there, but it is powerful when you start to see those things.
Directional. That's what I say. Like, look, you may not get it, but having that goal, it is directional, and knows I'm walking towards this way.
It is intention. Is intention. So, you just mentioned that this came to you, the culmination of you feeling that I got to get something new, do something else, and being interested in investment in that way. And then COVID, right, which really put things like right in your face. And to your point, we couldn't not see disparity. You could not see the lack of equity in the health space during COVID. So I'm sure a lot of people saw that. But not a lot of people said, now I'm going to do something about it. And so now I know what motivated you, but tell me about the firm. Tell me, like, what are the goals and what's the mission?
Yeah, so Syridex Bio is the name. We're a life sciences investment firm. Our goal is to invest in health solutions for diseases that disproportionately impact underserved communities. So if you think about it, we start with from indication like, okay, sickle cell, lupus, sarcoidosis. We have a number of diseases where we know there are big health disparities. And we think through, we kind of then kind of go out and say, all right, are there health solutions we can invest in that can help that patient population and hopefully help, put them in a better position, save lives, cures, what have you. But the ultimate goal is for that patient population overall is to help put them in a better position to address their unmet need. We do have a unique model in the sense that we're not the traditional venture fund, minority stake investment. So traditional fund, I'll give you $5 million or $1 million in exchange for X% equity in the company. That's not necessarily our focus. We're more venture creation, venture studio, where we identify the disease we want to invest in. We go out and try to find an asset that we like, that we think can address it. We'll buy it or license it, and then we actually create a standalone company around it. Pay the team, put money in it, and then let it grow. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it'll look the same, like at the end result, because we'll be a company with multiple or fund with multiple portfolio companies underneath. But we create companies, and so and I tell people it's not a new model. I think it works particularly well in biotech. When we looked at the different models that I thought had the best way of getting products across the finish line, this what was it for me, because we have way more control, we have way more visibility into how do we mitigate strategy and mitigate issues we identified up front. And there are companies like Roivant that has this model, Third Rock Ventures, they do the same, somewhat similar model. But that's kind of what we do, and it's been great because we've been able to. A couple of things it does is when people come to us and we get a lot of inbound, they are forced to talk about impact instead of like, hey, we got this great disease. This is what it is. No, hey, this is the disparities. This is what, because like that's the first line. If it doesn't address that, we're like, no, you got to pass. And so I've been seeing it forces people that talk to us or want us to kind of look at their products or the product pipeline to kind of talk through that lens, which has been helpful.
So again, you're smart and you can think about this and see all these things, but I'm a regular person and I'm like, this is important to me, but I don't know how does the fund get funded? Tell us about that process.
Yeah. So we have kind of like two pools of capital that we can deal with, right? So one is we're raising a fund. So raising a fund, we go and talk to the limited partners or institutional investors, really. So high net worth individuals, banks, state governments, things like that. And so I spend a lot of my time, going out pound the pavement, trying to raise capital. And it's usually talking with them. So that's one pool of capital that we get to pull from. And we're raising a fund. We're raising a $50 million fund. We have a little over $5 million kind of committed now. And that's where we're pounding the pavement to kind of get to 10. Then we can start deploying. Now, in going through that process, I've identified a number of investors that say, hey, we don't invest in funds, but we will invest directly in companies. And so we got to identify like a cohort of investors that we say, if we ever wanted to just do a deal outside of the fund, for example, we like this asset, we want to go and create a company around it. Right now, we already have a pool of investors that we think would be interested. And so that's the second kind of pool of capital we get to pull from and go and talk to people that way. So we kind of get two strategies that we're approaching.
I love that. And I'm glad I took the time because
to unpack it, right? Yeah.
Right. I think that we want to make sure that folks, speaking of equity, have an understanding of exactly how all of this stuff works, because I think most people who will listen and hear are at the end of when this all the things that you're talking about actually gets to market and it's done. And that's when they see the product of this, but seeing how it actually happens. And to your point of saying that it really is the money it drives the innovation, then you want to know where the money comes from.
Where the money is.
And it actually just made me think a lot that, there's so many systems and structures that can prevent so much innovation coming through, because if the place where the capital is does not want to fund those things, then it has a stopping point. And so that, I think, is a really important point to get across when you think about brands and you think about how you leverage networks and people invest and trust the people who are doing the thing in order to put their funds where that innovation is. So that's where the circle just closed for me, and I hope for everybody else who's listening too. So you do all of that, and I had a question here, and I'm glad you explained that, because I really think health equity is so important, and it's important everywhere. But globally, this can have such big impact. So you want to talk a little bit about like your vision for how this can actually impact global health equity?
Yeah. So like, I think first we got a good understanding of what health equity is.
Yes,
To me,
please.
it's a state where everyone, regardless of race, gender, what have you, religion, everyone has the fair and just opportunity to attain the highest level of living. Right? There shouldn't be any restrictions on you attaining your healthiest level of whatever you want to be. And I think for far too long, it's really not been the case. And some of it's historical, structural, that kind of things go into it. And so when we talk about health equity, and then the different components, like the social determinants of health that really go into, that feeds into what health equity is, it's education, it's economics, it's access to quality healthcare, it's the environment. So there's so many different factors that go into, getting to a person to achieve health equity, that I don't think no one institution can take it all.
True.
Right. And so we play on, if you're just looking at the social determinants of health and the different 4 or 5 criteria there, we play on the access to quality and healthcare pillar. That's where our focus is. And we want to make sure that there are sufficient health solutions for diseases that we felt in some instances weren't getting enough R&D, or we feel like there's still an unmet need for that specific community.
R&D is research and development?
Research and development.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we all know. I was like, I'm not sure, but okay. You see, y'all is catching. I know I'm smart with you. Okay.
That's kind of what it is. And so like we play a small part there, but I think governments and policies play a big part. You gotta, like, what are you doing with the environment? I think churches and faith community plays a big part, right? It's mind, body, soul, like community context. What support systems are particular churches providing for their community? In that, I think nonprofits, for-profits, companies making sure that they're providing quality healthcare for their employees is important. So there are so many different areas that institutions that really need to play in to kind of help accelerate health equity, close health disparities gaps. And like I said, we're playing a small role. So my hope is that I can be an advocate for a broader people understanding what health equity is, to share that it isn't one person. Everyone can play a role in addressing it, and then really being a mouthpiece, right? So like one of the things that I'll talk to investors and folks about, a lot of times they're like, they hear health equity, like, oh, go talk to the foundation. Like, no. I'm like, no. Let me tell you, you could do double bottom line returns. You can do good and do well. You can invest in a meaningful way to get strong returns. And, that product that you're investing in can help close health equity gaps. And I have to have that conversation. My hope is that at some point that's not the case, right? It'd be like, okay, this makes good investment sense. And, at the end of the day, I think capitalism is probably one of the strongest forces in the world, right? And if you can harness that and direct it in a way to a social benefit, that's the win-win, right? I don't think, like I talked to them, they care about health equity, but they care about returns way more. And so we have to, I spend my day talking to people and selling that point and saying, look, we got this good sickle cell treatment. There's still an unmet need out there that we need to invest in and help close this gap, or lupus, right? And so, and showing people that you can do well and make strong returns, market rate returns, really is something that I'm focused on.
Yes, that pitch is really the essence of branding, right? You think about what you have, what you're trying to do and what their need and desire is and how they meet, right? And how you can leverage all of those things at once in order to get to that vision you have at the end. I think that the work that you're doing and the things that you're elevating for everyone in terms of really understanding we all have a part in this is truly important, which is why I wanted to have the opportunity to have this conversation. Because I think that not enough of us, we all have a space to be able to say, like, let's do good for the good people, for ourselves, and still do good for ourselves, right? And so I'm glad that you took the time, and I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing it get to the places in which your vision has led. So tell me this, because I know you, and I know you from all the different things that we do together in terms of our volunteerism for the community through different boards and initiatives. And so I know what my answer is, but I want to ask you this. How do you balance those professional responsibilities with your commitment to community service and your leadership roles?
I feel like I got two answers. One is juggling, right? You gotta, there's no one right way. There's certain days where, like this past weekend, I'm in New York and, I'm not with my family, but then certain days I'm like, all right, look, I can't go out to this event or that. It's family time. Yeah. And so it's less balancing. It's more juggling. On certain days I'm more focused on one thing or the other. But I also think what's been helpful for me is having a clear idea of what I'm passionate about and what I care about. Because if you know that, it filters out all the other stuff. It may be good opportunities, but if it's not something that I'm truly passionate about, or it's like I could easily say, no, that's not for me. And so knowing your why is a filter, and it makes things a lot more clear. So I think those are the two things that have been helpful for me in helping to balance, juggle kind of the different leadership opportunities.
I love that. That knowing your why is a filter. I love that as a thought and strategy. When I think about this, I'm on a lot of boards. I do a lot of things. I tend to, at the beginning, when the ask comes to me, I will say, you're never going to get 100%, Paula. So what percent, what's the skill, what is it that you're trying to get, and I can commit to doing that thing, those things, but not everything. I won't be at all the events. And to be frank, I say it to my children too. What are the events? What are the things that you need me to be at? So that will be, I'm blocking those off. Those are non-negotiables, but everything else is up in the air. I'm not going to be the person who's there all the time, but you prioritize for us, and then we can move forward. And it is like juggling. It's like skating. Sometimes I fall.
Look. It is that happens, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like this year, my word of the year is joy. And so I will say, if somebody asks me something, will this bring me joy?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, I'm not going to be able to do it. Can't do it.
Look, 24 hours in a day, time is a great equalizer, right? It's everyone has that same amount of time. And the reality is it's limited. So you got to make sure you use it wisely. And I look, and probably in your role, and same thing with me, is like the more opportunities we get to do boards and things like that, you can do everything. You can do, there's so many opportunities out there. You just got to figure out, okay, where can I have the most impact? Which one am I passionate about? And then, let the cards fall where they may after that, really.
True. It's that strategy and that thoughtfulness about what your values are that really do build your brand, right? It's what makes the end result better, because you're not just saying yes because you're getting offers. So I was thinking about the questions I wanted to ask you, and I don't usually ask this question for folks who are not as seasoned, I'll say that. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you this because I'm interested in hearing the answer as your friend. What do you hope your impact and legacy will be?
It's interesting. So I actually go through this exercise annually for the last 5-6 years, like literally legacy. Like, what do I want it to be? Okay. And so I do give it a lot of thought, because this helps me filter out stuff, right? And I think for me, I want people to know I served God, that I loved my family, my wife, and my kids, that I loved to help people, and that I used whatever things I've been privileged to be blessed with over the course of my life. And I appreciate I've I got privilege. But that I try to work to make society a little bit better. My passion lies in health and economic equity, and would love to be known to be, from a legacy standpoint, to be helping to move the needle and being an advocate in that respect, removing boundaries for people so that, regardless of race, religion, what have you, that we can equalize the opportunities for folks, right? Because I appreciate, I feel like intellect and intelligence is somewhat equally distributed, but opportunities are not. And so I would love for my legacy to be at least helping move the needle a little bit in that regard.
I love that. All right. So we talked about all the science stuff, education. What about the fun stuff? What do you do for fun?
Oh man, I love the arts. I love music. I love plays. I love going to different shows and what have you. That gives me joy. And then also I have 2 kids. So I have a 4 and a 5-year-old who turns 6 in a few days. But that's like they give me joy. I don't think they appreciate how much they energize me. Even when I'm having a rough day at work, I work from home most days, but I see them and it's like that energy comes back. And so that's like the fun part of my day, hanging with my family, my kids, and then going out and doing the artsy stuff.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So I ask everyone that comes on my podcast 2 questions. One is this: stand by your brand moment. What is an aspect of your personal brand that you will never compromise on?
Transparency on my views and maintain integrity in my dealings. Like I can't, particularly I think as a lawyer, as an investor, those 2 things are paramount. If you don't have integrity, no one's going to trust you to manage your money. And that's what I am, a money manager. And you got to stand on those 2 things, transparency and integrity. So that's what I try to kind of stand on.
Love that. Okay. So Branding Room Only is a play on Standing Room Only because I'm clever. So what is an experience, skill that you have, something that would have people standing in a room to experience about you with only standing room?
Ooh, that one in the questions you saying, that's a new one. This one, I don't know.
Is it to play the piano?
Hey, look, I can play the piano. You know what? I'll say this. Because people ask me, like, hey, if you weren't doing what you're doing, like, I would probably be a musician. I love music. I love playing music, writing music, what have you. Yeah. And so I would love if personal branding, standing room only piece, if I was at a concert performing. It's not even like in front of the stage. I am the keyboardist in the band supporting somebody else. But that would be great for me.
I love that. I love that. Well, I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation, and I did. And I'm so happy that you were on podcast. Tell everybody how they can stay informed about what you're doing in Syridex Bio.
Yeah, so I would say the best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn, Squire Servance. So you can kind of look my name up. I'm there. And you could always check our website, Syridex Bio, SYRIDEXBIO.com. We have a news and insights part, so you can check what we're doing there. And that's it. So I'm actually not on a lot of other social media platforms, but LinkedIn is probably the best way to hear about what's going on with me and my firm.
Fantastic. Squire, it's wonderful having you. Thank you for joining me in the brand room. Everybody, go tell everyone about this. I curate specifically who I think I need you to hear from, because I have the opportunity to connect with so many wonderful people, and Squire is one of them. Tell a friend, download this, and share this with your people. See you next time in the branding room. Bye, y'all. Wasn't that fantastic? Again, having folks who have a passion, who have a strategy, all of these things build brands and how they make impact. I love the fact that he was able to talk so succinctly about what he wants his legacy to be. Squire was really wonderful in terms of taking us through his journey and what the impact is going to be based on this new innovation. And the world doesn't move without it. And so I really hope that you enjoyed this. And please do, again, share, download, like, rate, and tell a friend about this podcast and this conversation. See you next time in the branding room, everybody. Bye-bye.